Hey, it's Jacob. Welcome to my channel, and today I want to talk about how to automate your job with Python in 3 simple steps. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap so that if you want to automate your job, you'll know exactly what to do step by step. This video is going to be short, no fluff, because I want to give you the main steps and the main obstacles that you are going to encounter if you endeavor to automate your job. Let's get right into it with step 1. And step 1 consists of the foundations. And you want to start as small as possible. It's about choosing one single task and focus on it to the exclusion of everything else. So the question is, how do you choose that task? And I came up with 3 simple things to look for if you're going to focus on one thing. The first thing is everything that is time consuming, everything that you feel like you're wasting your time on. If you're not sure what you're wasting your time on, you can track your time, and that can be as simple as doing the following. Every hour of the day, you stop whatever you're doing and write it down with a timestamp next to it. Do that for a few days and you'll know what you're wasting your time on. The reason why time-consuming tasks are good candidates to focus on is because time is the only thing we can't get back. Once lost, it's lost forever. Repetitive tasks are also good candidates to automate. If you do anything more than once a day, that can be considered as repetitive. For example, even things as simple as opening a file or a folder can be considered as good candidates. Why? Because even if it's not time consuming, you save time over time. And you might ask yourself, what does it matter if I save 10 minutes over a period of 10 months? Well, that matters when we're going to build on it. But we're going to talk about that in a second. But the second point is about your energy, and we're going to talk about it right now. And that's actually the third thing to focus on, tedious tasks. And what it consists of is everything that uses a lot of your energy and willpower. It's mindless work like looking for information in a folder, a file, a line of text in a file, and so on and so forth. Or it's about comparing data like 2 Excel files or writing a report. Everything falling into that category is really important as a candidate, even when it's not time consuming. Today, thanks to the book called Willpower by Roy Baumeister and John Tierney, we now know that we have limited amount of willpower. Doing tedious tasks depletes us of our willpower, and at the end of the day, we don't have enough willpower to make good decisions. By automating those tedious tasks, you will have more energy at the end of the day, because what's the point of having a lot of time if you're too tired to use it? Those tasks are easy to identify. When you're doing those kind of tasks, time expends indefinitely. It feels like it takes your soul. And so that might be a little counterintuitive, but these kind of tasks might be even more important to automate than the time-consuming ones, for all those reasons that I just talked about. Step 2, supervision. Use it, make it fail, and iterate on it. After step 1, you should have a first version of your software. The point of this step is to use it as much as possible in as many situations as possible. The point is to have many use cases so that you can tell, in this situation that version doesn't work, and in that situation that version does work. You want to stress test your software so that you can find out more about the problems that you can potentially encounter. So the point is, use it. Why? Because the real world is always better at finding weird issues than the smartest person in the world. Don't try to be smart when you don't have to be. There is a quote by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, trial and error will always outperform design. We're vastly more intelligent. We have an IQ of 1000 when we do trial and error. And that's the second point, make it fail. If you have many use cases, it is going to fail. And write down all the use cases where it does. When it fails, you don't have to fix it. That's something a lot of people do wrong, me included. Most of the time, you don't have the time for it. Just write it down and you'll fix it later. Why does it work? In programming terms, it's called a bug report. It's so that you can uncouple the problem detection and the problem solving phases. If you don't uncouple those two phases, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to do both the wrong way. The problem detection phase is about finding the problems and making the software fail proactively, and then writing everything down. And the problem solving phase is about fixing the issue, making it work well. Those two have to remain separate. Then you iterate on it. You fix the issues you found, you increment the version of your script by 0.1 for every issue you fix. Ideally, you rerun the use cases where it failed to make sure it's fixed. This is if you want to be 100% clean, but you don't have to do that if you're going to encounter those problems again. Because if you're the end user, it's very likely that those problems are going to happen by happenstance. So if it's not fixed, you'll know about it. And the reason why it works is because by doing that, you're fixing the real problems based on what you encountered. You leave how smart you are outside the equation. You don't have to imagine how it could fail. In the real world, what we can anticipate doesn't usually happen. The challenge lies in the unknown unknowns, and that's why this process is vital. And step 3 is expansion. Build on it. And the first thing to do is have a process. If it doesn't already exist, write down a process where you execute on that thing. If you're not familiar with what a process is, it's just the context of whatever you're doing, what comes after and what comes before. Once you've written that process, use it a few times to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. A lot of tasks are automatic and it's not obvious to recall everything we do. So write down every process that includes the task that you worked on. And so the point is then to work on what comes after or what comes right before the task that you've worked on already. That's why I call it expansion. And the reason why it works is because by starting with a small task and working on what comes right after and right before, you do a few things. 1, you save willpower by not having to think about which step comes next since you're merging steps together. 2, you don't multiply the number of scripts and become overwhelmed because you're working on one single script. 3, you keep making your initial script more reliable while building on it. Now you can start including it into a bigger framework. It's called a bottom-up approach. Instead of creating an overarching program that manages each part of your job and then dissecting each part to get to something you can actually work on, it's a more realistic approach because you're confronted directly to the real-world issues. So you started from the bottom and you gradually worked your way up to automating full processes. This was done in order to now have the ability to combine those processes together. And that includes automating your decision-making process. Once different processes are automated, determine which one to use based on what information. And there are a few advantages to automating your decision-making process. The first thing is saving your willpower. In the book Willpower that I talked about earlier in this video, one way to be more efficient is to have a if-then rule, because having to make decisions depletes us of our willpower. In the book, there is a very simple example to understand how to apply that rule. If you're a writer, you can have the rule, if I don't write, then I do nothing. This is one way to save your willpower by not having to constantly make decisions and using your willpower to make decisions when it matters. A second reason to automate your decision-making process is to not rely on emotions to make a decision. If we look at the stock market, we can see the damage of emotional decision-making. The billionaire investor and hedge fund manager Ray Dalio explains in his book Principles how he automated his decision-making process to pick a stock. The point is that if you choose to automate your decision-making process, then you can think about solving what to do in what situation after the fact and reflect on the best way to deal with those kind of situations instead of reacting on the spot. And that's what the bug report is for. Ray Dalio calls it an issue log, but we're talking about the same thing. In other words, you standardize your way of thinking in a more rational way so that you can iterate on it based on real-world issues. Now, if you want to start implementing those 3 steps in your life, I know that it can be difficult if you have no idea how to get started. That's the reason why I created a free online course to help you. You can click on the link in the description to get it. Have a great day and see you in the next video.